Or perhaps you've seen some of those videos, like the one we just played, trending on social media. And so that is our discussion this evening. We're asking you, what is your worst taxi experience? We're asking this question, of course, following that social media trend. It's called the hashtag Broken Taxi Chronicles, and it shows passengers sharing their harrowing encounters with unsafe and poorly maintained minibus taxis. The Transport Department, through the Arrive Alive campaign, says the trend has evolved from social media discussions into a powerful collective call for action requiring immediate intervention from authorities and stakeholders. But for more on this discussion, I'm joined in studio by Transport Department spokesperson Collen Msibi, while on our video link, we are joined by the Automobile Association spokesperson, Eleanor Mavimbela. We're joined as well by the National Taxi Alliance spokesperson, Theo Malele, and the South African National Taxi Council spokesperson, Rebecca Phala. Everyone, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Collen, I think we'll start with you, since you are here in studio representing the Department of Transport nationally. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of these videos, and the department describing it as a call, a clarion call to action. Your initial thoughts seeing the trend?
Well, first of all, I think thanks for the opportunity. But first of all, let's condemn such behavior, because unroadworthy taxis aren't allowed in our roads, because it is the reason why we introduced a taxi recapitalization program. It was to get rid of the moving coffins, but we continue to see these vehicles on our roads, which is really unacceptable. But secondly, we want to say our biggest problem is that the law enforcement authorities at the provincial and local government level must do their work, because they've got the powers to impound such vehicles. Why do we still have such vehicles on our roads? One of the videos we've seen was somebody driving in reverse. Where were our officers to be able to deal with that kind of a situation? But thirdly, would want to commend the members of the public for what they are doing, because they bring to the fore the problem that we are dealing with as a department to ensure that our public transport, it is safe. So we want to ensure that even the provinces, wherever they are, they must make sure that there's, for instance, centers where people can report such incident so that the law enforcement officers can take action.
Yeah, you've used such strong words there. We've done the work that we can to remove moving coffins. So trends like this a lot of the time may make us laugh a little bit as we watch them on social media, and as conversations start to stir. And this is why we're also asking you to share with us some of your worst taxi experiences on 010-594-6010 to give us a call, or share with us your worst experience on 072-110-5584. That, of course, is via WhatsApp. We're really looking forward to getting your thoughts on this one. But even as we make the jokes, those words are very strong, and I want to bring in some of our taxi stakeholders. Theo Malele, of course, spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. Mr. Malele, good evening to you. You see these videos that South Africans are sharing. I mean, there's so many of them, and throughout the next hour, we'll be showing you some of the different perspectives that have been shared by South Africans. But what's the position of the National Taxi Alliance, for instance, when you see a trend like this and this conversation growing bigger and bigger?
Well, good evening, and thanks for having me on your program, and good evening to your viewers. Let's first start with the commentary that was made by the government spokesperson, who articulates that government's intervention came in handy to bring in the tax recapitalization. Yes, tax recap as a subsidy, capital subsidy, it came in handy, but we must also make mention of the reality from the core, is that the apartheid government had brought in a deregulation program that sought to create chaos within the taxi industry through the Welgemoed Commission in the 80s. So the current democratic government has not done enough to address these challenges that are besmirching the majority public transport mover. There is still a lot that can be done. It is just that there isn't a political will. Look, and another thing, we need to also apportion this blame. I will come back to the response as an NTA, but the municipality roads are the worst roads. You know, at some point, these vehicles were bought brand new, for which we are still paying, and heavily so. Some become, dilapidated by not utilizing proper infrastructure. Look, when developments are made, the IDP is being introduced. There isn't always the factoring in of an integrated transport plan, which is why you would realize that you find that there is sporadic violence as and when there are new developments. It's primarily because there hasn't been sufficient proper prior planning in ensuring that there is just, seamless operations. Now, in other areas, in rural areas, these taxis, they actually carve the roads from where there is no road. There is just potholes. And God forbid, what do you expect from cars that actually operate under such bad conditions? Obviously, these cars will become mechanically unfit. And to rub further salt into the wound, this is an industry that has been neglected by its own government. Even 30 years into democracy, nothing has ever been tangible that shows that there is, this transformation agenda that seeks to ensure that the playing field in the public transport space is being leveled. You find previously owned, buses by white companies. Those that have been enjoying subsidies, they still are enjoying subsidies. Some of them are not even here. They're somewhere, sitting on cliffs, in lakes, and so overseas, and just enjoying, just raking in money on a monthly basis. And nothing has been, spoken, of. As the National Taxi Alliance, we have developed a program, a safety program that is called Ndelanhle. And the intention of this program is to begin to promote good behavior amongst our drivers. I know we haven't done sufficiently so. There is still a lot that still needs to be done in that regard. It seeks to address issues of, unroadworthy vehicles, whereas we speak to operators in almost every meeting as part of our customer service agenda to say, what is this that we need as an industry to do in order to ensure that, our taxis are safe, our taxis are, service the commuters. Obviously, we're not being assisted by government. You go and look at the infrastructure. Wait, that is being provided for the utilization of taxis as taxi ranks. It leaves a lot to be desired. Those are concrete jungles that are urine-rich, that are not even properly kept. There is just a chaos out there.
Okay. Sure, you've said a mouthful. I mean, you've gone all the way back to the 80s, right? So let's get other perspectives here, Theo. Rebecca Phala is with us. Rebecca is spokesperson for Santaco nationally. Rebecca, I don't know if you want to respond to what we've heard as well from Theo and from Collen, but I'm already thinking about what your initial thoughts are when you see the trend. Because, I mean, some of these videos are harrowing, right? We can certainly talk about the state of the vehicles, but there's also the videos that we see around driver behavior. I mean, there's one video, again, I said we'll play them throughout the hour, where you see a driver, reversing in oncoming traffic, right? So you see cars driving towards this taxi. This is the desperation of South Africans taking to social media to highlight what is going on as they get to and from where they need to go.
Good evening, Malele, and to your viewers as well as everybody else that's on the platform. It's important, the historical context that Mr. Malele has provided in terms of the reality of the infrastructure that we have to operate on. because the reality needs to be understood that we don't just wake up and start operating cars that are regarded as scraps. These cars were at some point purchased as brand new vehicles that have had to maneuver the difficult road conditions that we all know to be a reality in South Africa. But look, as Santaco, we want to also send a cautionary message to say, when messaging is widely circulated on social media, it's important that such messaging is understood in context. What do we mean by this? There are videos that could easily be recycled, having been issued way before, only to find that some of these cars have already been scrapped in accordance with the scrapping program that Mr. Msibi has spoken to. And that's not to say we are oblivious to the reality that not all of our fleet is always in good condition. But look, it's curious that Mr. Msibi speaks about how it's curious for them as government that we continue to have cars that are in this particular condition, because the taxi recapitalization program that he speaks of, which we may have to follow up with him on, is to ask, how has it been doing? Has there been an uptake by the taxi industry to that particular program? How much are they giving in terms of an allowance so that a vehicle owner can then be able to, given this old car, to be able to purchase a new car and continue to operate a taxi business and be able to fend for their family? Because the reality of the matter is this, Naledi and your viewers. For one to be able to secure a brand new vehicle, for cash, you're going to pay just over 500,000. The taxi recapitalization program that government is giving, which we duly appreciate as an initiative, as a sort of standing leg for you to sort of get started, does not even do much in terms of, putting in a deposit to get a brand new vehicle. The reality, again, is that the financing sector is not very kind to the taxi industry. The percentages that we have to pay if you purchase this vehicle and you have to now pay monthly repayments is incredibly difficult. So we're not oblivious to the reality that we're not always operating the most roadworthy vehicles. Hence, we've got initiatives such as the Hlokomela campaign. Mr. Malele spoke about something similar that they're doing on their side.
Yeah.
But the reality of the matter is we feel government is not meeting us halfway.
Okay, well, we're going to get a response to that. Let's hear from Arrive Alive, though. Eleanor, hashtag Broken Taxi Chronicles. There's so much to talk about. I mean, the industry is saying that they need to see government to meet them halfway. But from the perspective of the passenger, I mean, they just want to get to work and back home safely.
Good evening, Naledi. And definitely, while this trend might have started as something humorous on social media, it's definitely highlighting the very real and dangerous issue that we have with the conditions of minibus taxis that we have on South African roads. And while we understand the plight of Santaco as well as Mr. Malele, I'm not hearing with regards to the safety of the passengers or the commuters who are reliant on minibus taxis to commute to work, to commute to school and back home. And for us as the Automobile Association, we definitely see this as a call to action, but especially for law enforcement as well as the transport industry to have urgent and immediate action taken with regards to this issue. It is a call for action that we see from South Africans, and it is quite urgent. I mean, if you look at looking at the videos that we see on this challenge on social media, it is harrowing and it's quite dangerous. And for us, we're looking at if 45% of South Africans are using minibus taxis to commute on a daily basis. We largely thinking about the safety of these passengers, as well as looking also at the high rate of accidents, as well as fatal accidents that take place on our roads that come from cars that are not fit for purpose to be on South African roads. So as an Automobile Association, we're standing on the part of the safety of those commuters, while we do also understand and appreciate the challenges that the minibus taxi industry is facing. We do have to put the safety of South Africans first.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously as Arrive Alive, apologies, as the Automobile Association have made quite a few recommendations, right, on exactly what it is that really should be done. And we'll get into those in a few moments. But we're taking your calls. What are some of the worst taxi experiences that you have had? I can certainly remember a handful of my very own. But give us a call, 010-594-60 089110. Simon is calling in from Pretoria. Simon, good evening.
Good evening, Naledi. How are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for calling. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm a bit concerned about the comments from Mr. Malele there in his opening statement. You know, starting to blame apartheid. Yes.
I'm listening, Simon. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to say that I'm a bit concerned about the opening statement of Mr. Malele there. You know, talking about apartheid and you know the roads, this and that. We're talking today, 2025. You know, let's forget about what apartheid did. The question is, what are we doing as a taxi industry to make sure that the roads are in a good condition? I travel on the R80 every morning to work. You should see, he's talking about these cars are getting destroyed and damaged. These taxis, they drive on the far right of the lanes, the far left of the lanes, where there's no tar there. They destroy their own cars. We see them every single morning. So the end result here is, what are they doing as an industry to assist local governments to make sure that, you know, these potholes are sorted and stuff? They must put an investment there. It cannot be that always we have to blame the government. What are they doing? It's a multi-billion industry. They've got a lot of money and they don't even pay taxes for that matter.
Okay.
You know? So people must come right here.
Okay. Simon, thank you so much for calling and appreciate your thoughts. Let's take another caller. Raymond, also in Pretoria. Raymond, good evening.
Good evening. How are you, ma'am?
I'm well, sir. Talk to us.
Fine. I'm just seeing these taxi chronicles. Is these ventures which operate in Midrand, are they fall under taxi industry? Because if you can see those ventures there in Midrand, which they are just parking 2 meters away from the coast, how they are, how they look, that's the one you can just call it a moving coffin, with no doubt.
Yeah, and those are some of the local taxis, right, that would operate. So in a township, they operate in you know, in that particular area. Correct, Raymond?
Yes. And then the Santaco come and blame the government and say the government this and that. While they have taxis, they look like the moving coffin. But those taxis, they are paying the ranks and the marshals and what. How can they see those taxis are not in a good condition to carry people while the people are still paying? Because you can't say someone must pay the rent while his taxi is the correct. You should have taken the taxi out and said, go and buy the new one so that tomorrow can come and pay with the brand new taxi. But you allow someone who is driving a moving coffin to give you money, which is sometimes just only concerned about the money, not about the safety of the passenger.
Yeah, Raymond, thank you so much for calling. There's so much to respond to here, Collen, and I'm gonna let you take the platform now. Theo, Malele talked about the apartheid government and its deregulation of the taxi industry, and that in the 31 years of our democracy, very little has been done about that. And that is why we have this problem. The roads are the reason why, or the state of our roads is also the reason why some taxis are so badly dilapidated.
Well, indeed, I think it's valid points that he's raising. But I thought when we came to this program, we are here to talk about the unroadworthiness of the vehicles. In terms of the National Traffic Act, taxis are supposed to go for roadworthiness test every year, annually. But you continue to see the vehicles that are not even supposed to be on the road. How do you account for that as an operator? It has nothing to do with the road. It has to do with the law. The law says go and test your car every year. But you still see those kind of vehicles. How do you, then I would like to hear the answer to that. The buses are expected to be tested every 6 months. How do you account? Hence, I'm saying we're partly to blame because probably our law enforcement as well, they're not doing their part. because they're not supposed to be on the road, those kind of vehicles. They're supposed to be impounded. Let's talk about the infrastructure. Granted, yes, there's an issue about the infrastructure. But as a national government, at the provincial and the local government, they've got their own equitable share in terms of the budget. But we have put almost over 10 billion in terms of assisting the provinces and the local government in as far as fixing the roads. For instance, you would know the Vala Zonke program, where we've had to take over the patching of potholes so that we are able to assist even the other spheres of government. So at the national level, that's the kind of contribution we've made. And as far as these issues, I think it is quite correct. There are certain issues, for instance, the issue of subsidization policy. There is a policy in place. We're trying to see if we can finalize that matter. And indeed, we do accept that it is long overdue that we should be doing something about that. The buses are getting almost more than 4 billion in terms of the subsidy. But we are working on it. It's something that we're looking at. The Minister of Transport, currently Ms. Barbara Chris, has said we've got to review the taxi recapitalization program. I think there's been meetings happening in the background. There's something that has to be done around the issues of affordability in terms of what Rebecca was saying, the kind of deposits they have to pay and so forth. So it is something, it's in the pot that is being cooked at the moment in terms of what is it that can be done. I wouldn't want to, there isn't a policy position at this point. But let me say this. We introduced a taxi recapitalization program in 2006. Up to so far, we've been able to scrap over 80,000 old taxi vehicles.
Yeah.
We've been able to pay close to 5 billion in terms of the scrapping allowance. I think Rebecca did ask about the question, how much is being paid for the scrapping allowance? We started at 50,000 in 2006. Today, we're paying over 150,000. I think it's about 150,000 in terms of a scrapped vehicle. When you come and bring your vehicle for scrapping, we give you 150,000 to take with. But is that enough for you to be able to go and buy a vehicle? We think this review process must look at those kind of things as to what is it that can be done. So I think in a nutshell, I would want to say that. But I think operators have to take the responsibility because you can't honestly be allowing a vehicle to leave your yard in the morning, knowing fully well that this is an unroadworthy vehicle and it goes and transport people. As an operator yourself, you should be saying, I should do something about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then the question becomes, if scrapped vehicles are able to receive 150,000 Rand, why are we still seeing videos like this of taxis that look like that on our roads? And when we come back, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll speak to the taxi industry and get their views, of course, on the issue that's been raised around the testing of our taxis once every year. Is that taking place and is it being enforced within the industry? On the other side of this. Yeah, obviously someone wearing an umbrella, using an umbrella inside a taxi because they're being rained on from inside the taxi. Those are some of the visuals that are being shared by passengers on social media in that hashtag Broken Taxi Chronicles, a trend that's got people talking. And so we're asking you, what is your worst taxi experience? Of course, you're more than welcome to give us a call, 010-594-6010, or send us a WhatsApp, 072-110-5584. Let's continue getting responses to the points that were made before the break, though, with our panelists. And Rebecca, I think I'll come to you on this one. There's, of course, the issue around what actually is being done by the taxi industry to ensure the taxi owners are having these vehicles tested once a year, as is prescribed by law.
To be important for your viewers to not misunderstand what we are giving as context in terms of the reasons why we're having this problem as it persists. So we're not oblivious, I'm reiterating, we're not oblivious to the responsibility that we have as a taxi industry. Hence, we've spoken to you about initiatives like the Tlokomela campaign, which was started as Santaco in 2010. It includes training of our drivers in terms of issues of customer service, but it also includes there being patrollers who literally go to taxi ranks to check if vehicles are roadworthy, to check if the documentation is up to date, to check if you're not moving around with a car that's overloaded, amongst other things. The other most important message that's going to have to echo around here is that this is a work in progress, in the same way that you hear Mr. Msibi talking about how there are policy positions that are being looked at to better really deal with the issue of road safety. So it shouldn't be that we get to a point where South Africans are asking why the taxi industry is not doing the mandate of government of fixing potholes. We're in the business of ferrying South Africans from point A to point B safely. That's why we're saying to you, the material conditions that we're working with are difficult. So what we do is, it is a prerequisite by every taxi association through these road safety campaigns. Mr. Malele will talk about Ndlela Ntle, we'll talk about Tlokomela, to make sure that these vehicles have got up-to-date documentation. But the reality is there are loopholes in the system, inclusive of there not being due diligence that's done, even by law enforcement. Mr. Msibi has already admitted to that, to say there are areas that need improvement. So it should not be seen as though we are completely removing the blame from ourselves. We are giving context to say, why is it that there remains to be a prevalence of these non-roadworthy vehicles that continue to ferry South Africans? It's because of the material conditions that we have to work with on a daily basis as an industry. If we were completely oblivious to the responsibilities that we have to take, we wouldn't be partaking in platforms such as these. So even the issue of saying, why do we seem to not care about the commuters who just want to get into a vehicle and be ferried safely? We do. They are the reason why our business continues to ferry people and put bread on respective families, especially because we continue to be one of the biggest employment creators in the country.
Okay. Mr. Malele, do you want to take that one as well, around how the National Taxi Alliance, for instance, is ensuring that owners are getting their vehicles tested? And then there was the point that was made earlier by Mr. Msibi around the 150,000 rand that is given when a taxi is scrapped. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, look, the 150,000 that is being given as a capital subsidy for scrapping purposes, it is not sufficient. Our position is that this should be half of the retail value of a new vehicle. If I could just expand a little bit on this one, on average, a taxi will do about 600 rands per day, and multiply that by 25 days. You wouldn't do 18,000, and yet the repayment value is around 18,000. You still have to contend with the maintenance of the vehicle, for which you would not even have money for that. You still have to contend with the driver. You see, our biggest challenge is the cash that's in the route. If we can remove the cash, we'll begin to change even the perception, the mindset of the drivers. This should change the behaviors on the road. It should actually make them not to drive as recklessly as they are actually being seen to be doing. Not that we are oblivious of these realities on the ground. We do see these, but we were just putting on a perspective of what actually brought us to where we are. Look, I mean, a study was conducted by UJ a couple of years ago that sought to look at the revenue stream. It revealed that 40% of what's supposed to be coming to the owners of the vehicles stays with the drivers. So the issue of cash management also is a critical one that needs to be addressed. And then secondly, the National Taxi Alliance has been advocating for a temporary scrapping license so that we can remove these vehicles and for scrapping purposes, and people are going in there in drifts and drabs. But I think it would not be correct for us to quickly rush these issues by not mentioning that even the system of operating licenses issuance, it is a long and tedious thing. You wait for years on end to have an operating license.
Yeah.
You end up having people operating with fraudulent licenses, bringing in unroadworthy vehicles, when in essence, every year, every vehicle goes in for roadworthy test so that you can be given the right to operate on the roads. But I still say that the municipality roads leaves a lot to be desired. And people must appreciate this reality that we have to contend with that. And yes, the drivers drive recklessly and they just drive over this. But how do you then spot a pothole when it's raining? It becomes invisible.
Yeah.
So it's basically difficult. So we are facing challenges, but the reality of the matter is not even a single meeting that I said within the industry, since I've been in the industry for many months ago, where we spoke of having to drive on roadworthy. We always say no.
Yeah, the line is giving a bit choppy there, but we're going to come back to you, Mr. Malele, as we continue this conversation. But let's take calls. We're asking you some of your own worst taxi experiences, and what do you make of the discussion that we're having this evening? Anele is calling in Witbank. Anele, good evening.
Good evening, my lady. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for calling. What are your thoughts?
I'm fine. Ma'am, I've got a lot of questions about this industry.
Shoot, go ahead.
A lot. Number one, the municipalities, they receive subsidies or contributions from companies. And those companies, they contribute through the municipality because they go throughout our areas of residential sometimes because we are close to mines. It takes me to go through the national road before I go to Akavili because the road there is not nice. It takes a person from Witbank to take a Bronxbreak road than Verena because Verena is not roadworthy. So where is the money going? I once spoke to one person. They were doing an Arrive Alive campaign there. And off record, she also asked the municipality person that, guys, we gave you such and such an amount. Why is this road still like this? Because our trucks drive there. Hence, you know that Mpumalanga has got a lot of trucks around.
Yes.
We as people who are commuting with small cars, we cannot drive after the trucks.
Yeah.
Where is the Department of Roads?
All right.
Then again, I come back. I'm sorry to be long.
Yeah, I need to move on as well. Anele, please be brief. Yeah.
Yes, I need to talk to Mr. Malele. Mr. Malele, one of my friends' father passed away when we were doing matric, and I'm 42 years now. They don't have taxis, but his operating license is still on the taxi rank. How do you go about that? And it also goes to the Santaco.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anele. We'll get you that question as well on the operating license. Chris in Durban. Chris, good evening.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Appreciate it.
I want to give kudos to the taxi drivers. You know what? I own a car. I go to various places where I want to. The taxis, yes, they stop at wrong places. They drop passengers off there. The challenge is not the taxi drivers. It's what they've been rewarded for the day. I play lots of golf. The guys I play golf with, they tell the taxi drivers, this is X amount I want a day. So which means anything above that, that's what he takes home. Which means that if I put 200 or 300 people in a taxi, that's an additional income for the driver. Because he has to meet his 2,000 to 3,000 rand a day to the owner of the vehicle so that they get their return, which means fuel as well.
Yeah.
I know that because I play with some of the guys. So all I'm saying to you is that the taxi drivers are doing what they're doing, and I'm telling you right now, I own a car.
Okay.
I will do the same as them.
Okay, Chris, yeah, that's an interesting point. And this is the reality of what our taxi drivers are dealing with. But I think let's get some responses here, Collen, to a lot of what has been said. I mean, there's certainly the issue around this subsidy, this 150 simply not being enough. I mean, that's one of the issues that's been raised. But we haven't actually talked about what the Department of Transport is doing to speak to municipalities and other government officials and structures that are necessary to prioritize the state of our roads. It's an important one. It doesn't just impact the taxi industry, it impacts us all.
Well, of course, I get your point. Firstly, let me start with the issue of the subsidy. I think I've said to you these discussions in terms of having to review the taxi recap program. And partly because we understand, and the reason why people are saying, for instance, you'd see a taxi driving on the yellow lane. It is mainly because they are chasing the profit in order to pay the 20,000, which you and I would be paying about 2,000 for our cars. So for the taxi industry, it's totally different because their interest rates are high and so forth. So it is, to an extent, I would say quite understandable. It's quite controversial, understandable. But the issue is that we've got to revisit that matter, which is why the minister has said, let's review this process. Let's engage with the financial institutions. Let's see what can be done around that.
Yeah.
The issue of the local spheres of government, if I were to put it that way, I mean, we've had engagements. For instance, this issue of having to adopt a road, it's been there. We've said it even last year. We've said it. If you've got a mine and we are using a specific road, adopt that road and be able to assist the community in that area to fix that road. And a part of some of the mines are actually doing that.
Yeah.
But as government, national government, you would know, I mean, there's a certain amount which is allocated to provinces and the local government. But over and above that, we're saying as national government, here is the provincial grant that you can use to fix your roads. So we engage and they've got to report and account for that money. So what we've started, because we've realized, for instance, even in the public transport, what we call the integrated public transport networks, you would give 10 billion, but when it's time to account, we don't know where the money went. So the minister and the deputy minister have embarked on what they call follow the money, so that the spheres of government can be able to account as to where did that money go.
Right.
So that's the part, that's how we are interacting with the provinces and the local government when it comes to the IPTNs. And I think it is quite an important program. But for instance, the issue of the potholes. We're saying that SANRAL will take over, assist the local government to be able to fix the potholes. And they've been doing that kind of work. I don't have the statistics at the moment, but they continue to do so. So it is part of a national government initiative to ensure that we assist other spheres of government.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to move towards wrapping it up on the other side of this short break. Of course, we are still with the Automobile Association, and we'll get recommendations, because for those that have been sending these videos and uploading them online to share the harrowing experiences that they're having inside minibus taxis, they just want solutions. So perhaps we'll get some of those recommendations on the other side of this. Can you imagine the fear of some of those passengers in that taxi as it's driving towards oncoming traffic? Well, let's start to wrap up our discussion, but we're taking calls as well. Dikeledi is calling in from Tshwane. Dikeledi, good evening. Thanks for calling in.
Good evening. As the former MNC for Transport in the city of Tshwane and the spokesperson on transport, there's one thing that I must say. The industry does not contribute to the infrastructure of local government. So we wait for national government and provincial governments to give us grant funding to fix those roads or upgrade roads or put in the necessary infrastructure. But that's not the issue that is here. The issue here is about road safety. And the unfortunate part is we have provincial governments and municipalities that have small impounds or provincial governments that have impounds that are not compliant. So the industry goes a long way in actually going unregulated. And the unfortunate reality is that nobody wants to touch the industry, because what they do is the minute that you start impounding their vehicles for non-compliance, whether it's for route forms and permits, they actually shut down municipalities and close them down and make it ungovernable, and with nobody coming to actually assist municipalities in cracking the whip in this regard. For the passengers that do get into those vehicles, if you refuse to get into a vehicle, you're going to stand at a taxi rank till they decide what kind of vehicle you're going to get into, just in terms of your safety. So there's a bigger issue that does not just look at issues around the vehicle quality, but as well in terms of bringing Metro Police and SAPS and as well the industry on board. But the industry needs to play its critical part. And it's high time that we also started taxing the industry for using those roads as well. And as well ensuring that that money comes back into the road infrastructure that needs to be built and maintenance thereof. Because what municipalities do have and should have in place is a fund where even with the big, massive truck companies, that they pay into the city to maintain the infrastructure. And a lot of the time, that is also not being done. Yeah. We have told industries before, when they have requested new roads, and we told them that because you are using this road for your heavy trucks, you are going to actually have to put in money to upgrade that road.
Yeah, Dikeledi, I get that point. And I think it's an important one, Dikeledi, talking about how there needs to be contribution from the industry as well to the road infrastructure. Let's see some of the WhatsApps that have come in on this discussion. Ketani says, good evening, Naledi. It is perplexing to see how the industry is bossing and bullying the country as a whole. When their vehicles are found to be unroadworthy, they will strike and block roads so that their vehicles, which are deemed not fit to commute passengers by authorities, should be released to our roads. What an irresponsible and uncontrollable industry. Ketani, thank you so much for sending in that message. Mr. Msibi, this one is not signed, but it says, examiners from private testing stations are responsible for passing vehicles without being physically tested. Government must stop privatizing testing stations. Traffic officials are trying their best but feel defeated as they discontinue vehicles today. They are back on the road the following day. Mr. Msibi, stop blaming officers. Vusi from Alexander says, I'm using public transport every day. Those taxis you talk about are like Ngola, and the police don't do anything. He or she just takes money from the driver and lets him go. That is what is happening on the roads. Vusi, thank you for sending in that message. Natalie says, good evening. Taxis look roadworthy on the outside, but falling apart on the inside. Some of us, we prefer to take taxis that are roadworthy. A few weeks ago, arrived at my workplace drenched in water, yet I was in a taxi, and yet the rain was pouring in the taxi. We prayed once we got in and during the commute and pray again until we arrive safely. Santaco is well aware of these taxis and will not do anything about it. Natalie, thank you for sending in that message. Mr. Malele, there was a question that came in earlier around a family member who had a operating license, had passed away, and yet it seems that license is still being used. Is that a concern? Respond to that, and just perhaps your closing thoughts. And as a closing thought, a commuter gets to a taxi rank. They see a taxi is falling apart. They do not want to get into that taxi for fear of their life. What do you say to that commuter?
I cannot also step into an unroadworthy vehicle, so I cannot condone that. Talking to and law enforcement agencies must do their work. I have vehicles as well. I ensure that they are well maintained, they are well looked after. But it is not an easy feat, because you have to pull resources from elsewhere to try and cross-subsidize yourself, because you're not getting any assistance whatsoever. You see, even the operating license processes, like your previous speaker says, they were also involved in public transport, but they are not aware of the loopholes and that are in the process of the operating licenses. That is something that we are currently working on with the MEC of Transport in Gauteng province. And in time, in good time, we should resolve that aspect. And we are fully committed to ensuring that we bring about the necessary changes within the public transport space, but we just want a government that has the appetite to work with us to transform, modernize, and professionalize this industry.
Okay. Eleanor, you've been so patient with us and we really do appreciate it. Your recommendations for certainly the industry, the sector and the department.
Thanks, Naledi. Our recommendations from the Automobile Association is definitely that we need law enforcement to be more rigorous and continuous with regards to roadworthy checks when it comes to minibus taxis. These minibus taxis that are not roadworthy do not need to be on our roads. They need to get them off the road. And secondly, we also need a culture shift in South Africa in terms of owners of minibus taxis need to also take responsibility to ensure that their vehicles are regularly maintained and to at least meet the minimum requirements when it comes to safety features that they have in our cars before they even get on our road. And also, lastly, we need to empower commuters to keep conversations such as this ongoing and to be able to give them places and platforms where they are able to voice out their frustrations and be able to let law enforcers know with regards to minibus taxis that they come across on their daily commutes from work or school or home.
Yeah.
So for us as the Automobile Association, we're saying that road safety needs to come first. Yes, we do understand that road infrastructure is not the best that it could be, granted, but road safety needs to come first, and it comes first with ensuring that the minibus taxis that are on our roads are fit for purpose.
Okay, Rebecca, final thoughts, and I've got about 20 seconds and 30 seconds maybe. A passenger is about to get on a taxi that they can tell, you know, that this is not a roadworthy vehicle. Where do they go? Who do they speak to? Who do they cry to?
Look, we've got marshals that you can always speak to at a taxi rank if you don't feel safe. We've got a call center number at Santaco, 012-321-1043, 012-321-1043. Make sure you've got the registration plate and the ranking facility that you're at so that we can attend to that matter timeously. Naledi, we're hoping one day we can have a discussion about this continued false narrative of saying the taxi industry does not contribute to taxation in this country. It is incredibly faulty. It needs to be put into context. One other thing that we want everyone to not make a mistake of, people should stop thinking that the taxi industry takes pride in ferrying South Africans in vehicles that are not roadworthy, and that we take pride in putting people's lives at risk. We carry precious cargo in the form of human life, and we continue to say we will clokomena because we care about South Africans, and we will do all that we can to ensure that their safety is guaranteed.
Okay. 012-321-1043 is Santaco's call center to report. I think let's close it here, Mr. Msibi. The final thoughts here again to the priority at hand here is, of course, the passenger. If they feel that they are unsafe with a vehicle that they are now being pressured into entering, you know, Dikeledi also talking about when you get to a taxi rank and you can't choose the taxi, they'll leave you there and then and you're not able then to get to where you need to go. Where does that passenger go? Who do they call?
Well, RTMC, they've got a toll-free number, which is 0861 400 800. But the problem is that RTMC is at a national level. So some of these problems, they happen at a local level. So we've got, hence I was saying, part of what needs to happen. For instance, KwaZulu-Natal, they are going to be launching a call center, I think it's next month, where people can be able to call and report their problems. And I think that it is quite important. Let me also just address this issue of the taxi industry in terms of the subsidization. I think it is important. It's a matter that we are attending to, and the review of the taxi industry, I think, of the taxi recap program, it is quite an important issue. But lastly, I think the issue of the law enforcement officers. We've got 22,000 law enforcement officers in the country. The vehicle population is 14 million. People who have licenses are more than 13 million. So you can imagine 22,000 officers having to police all these vehicles. Hence, we are saying, let's have a dedicated public transport law enforcement unit. KwaZulu-Natal, they've already got Chanel. So we're saying that we're looking at having that in other provinces so that we are able to deal with these issues of unroadworthy vehicles.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We really have appreciated. Collen Msibi is, of course, the national spokesperson for the Department of Transport. Rebecca Phala, national spokesperson for Santaco. Theo Malele, spokesperson for the National Taxi Alliance. And thanks as well to Eleanor Mavimbela, who is, of course, the spokesperson for the Automobile Association. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We've got more news on the other side of this.